Well, what's up, guys? Welcome back to The Collision. Daniel here. You know, space exploration is all good and fun until the moon suddenly loses its orbit, circles too close to Earth, and wipes out life as we know it. And if you don't believe me, well, I encourage you to check out Moonfall that just hit theaters, the latest kind of throwback disaster film from director Ronald Emmerich, known for Day After Tomorrow, Independence Day. I know he does other kind of genres and stuff, but sort of known for these sort of, kind of establish almost the template of what these sort of disaster CGI spectacle movies are. And that's probably the best way to describe what this movie is all about. It is exactly, 100% what you would expect from a movie like this. This is a paint-by-numbers kind of disaster flick. And I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way or even as a criticism. This movie is sort of a big, dumb, mindless, CGI, destructive, 2 hours of just sort of noise and explosions. It is absolutely that. But I'll admit I have a soft spot. One of my guilty pleasures is sort of these disaster flicks. You don't go into these movies expecting some deep kind of philosophical story or real memorable characters. You just go to see people try not to get blown up by aliens or explosions or volcanoes or whatever the disaster of the week happens to be. And I will say that, maybe I'm give a little more grace to these types of films than some more like hardened critics that are looking for story and acting, and I'm just like, just blow stuff up. So I may be a little easy on these sort of movies, but I would say that I think across the board, even though my expectations weren't super high, that it's really not as bad as you might expect it would be, going by the trailers. Like I said, this is a dumb movie. It is, kind of cardboard characters. There's not a whole lot of depth beneath sort of all the explosions and stuff. It's cheesy. You have characters, mumbling some nonsense, mumbo jumbo about scientific terms, trying to explain what's going on. And you have characters saying things with a straight face, even as no one in the audience can keep a straight face while they're watching this sort of real serious moment and just sort of a dumb spectacle movie. But I think, people go to these movies for this sort of that dumb spectacle, and this movie delivers. It's the same template that they've been doing these movies for decades now, but the technology has got to the point where they can deliver more of that spectacle. And there's some pretty cool, obviously this is a kind of movie that benefits, I think, from seeing in like a big theater rather than like on your laptop or something. Like, there's some scenes where like the moon is orbiting Earth and kind of coming close into Earth that is sort of like a wow, kind of an awesome, just sort of kind of old school cinema magic, if you will. So it definitely delivers on sort of that spectacle level. And kind of the premise of this movie, again, it's not reinventing the wheel. It's not super complicated. Some alien force or unknown anomaly or some other power or something goes on in space that I won't spoil for you, that sets the moon out of orbit. The Earth has about 3 weeks as the moon kind of circles closer and closer to Earth, and as it does, it's resetting the water tide levels, and it's sending debris down, and sort of slowly destroying Earth before it's eventually just going to crash into it and blow up the planet. Humanity, as they often do in these movies, needs to rise to the occasion, and of course, it's never the expected heroes. It's always the outcasts and the people that no one believes, and kind of the loners in society that step up to do what the government and everyone else can't seem to do. So they jump on a rocket ship and they fly up to the moon, and they're going to fix the problem. And that's really this movie in a nutshell. Things get crazy, especially at the end. This thing goes really kind of bizarre, and I won't spoil it for you, but they definitely they take some pretty big home run swings at the end of this movie. But like I said, the spectacle is good. It's exciting. There's moments that are pretty thrilling as you're kind of watching these characters trying to kind of fight against the odds. And even the characters. You don't go to these movies for deep character development, and you're not going to find a whole lot of that here. Even though this movie is filled with like A-list and recognizable actors. And Halle Berry is one of the lead characters, and she's fine. She's a sort of that kind of cutout of the kind of the noble, heroic character. John Bradley, kind of known, I think, exclusively for his role in Game of Thrones. He's kind of one of the other main characters in this, and I dug what he did in this movie. I don't know if I just sort of like him. He sort of plays that sort of like the comic relief, but kind of a rarity in these sort of movies is that he's kind of endearing and funny and not annoying. At least I didn't find him annoying. Maybe some other people will find him annoying, but he really kind of carries this movie. He's charming. He's just sort of about the only character in this movie that you kind of care, that you know, it's like, hey, you know, the moon can wipe out the rest of humanity. Everyone else kind of seems like they're jerks or they're just boring people. But cheering for this guy, so he's kind of the heart and soul for the movie. And the story is interesting enough. Again, it's not. I'll get into maybe some, like in a second, the themes or some of the stuff going on in this movie. But don't expect a whole lot for that. This isn't a movie you go to kind of, you know, help you understand reality better. You just go to this, enjoy, you know, 2 hours at the cinema. I think in that way, this movie definitely accomplishes what it's going for. As far as kind of content on the surface, profanity, there's one very clear F-bomb, kind of the one allowed F-bomb given the PG-13 rating of the movie. It's played in a humorous way, and it is kind of funny, but that's the one kind of verbalized F-bomb. There's also the F word written on the side of the spaceship, which gets screen time kind of throughout the movie. So there's that, and then kind of apart from that, there's just there's a fair amount of just sort of minor profanities. The S word kind of being the favorite word, the favorite swear word to use in this. There's no real like kind of like vulgar innuendos in this movie, but there is this sort of kind of more minor profanity that's kind of scattered all throughout this movie. Violence, for a movie where the world is ending and everyone's dying, it's really not a violent movie. Obviously, people die. People are getting crushed by things, and but you never really see it. It's just sort of implied that in a situation like this, people are dying, but you don't. There's really nothing gratuitous violence-wise. And sexuality, there's nothing, which is refreshing. There's no nudity. There's really sexuality has no part to play in this movie. So as far as this sort of stuff on the surface, there's not a whole lot, maybe other than just sort of more profanity than usual to guess to be aware of going into it. Like I said, themes, you're not going to this movie to dig deep into some philosophical themes and worldview issues and try and kind of understand things. You're just going to see things blow up. But there's a couple of things I thought maybe more surface level, but kind of themes and stuff going on throughout this movie. And I can see the first one is probably just kind of like the search for truth and censorship by the media and conspiracies and who do we believe, and which ended up being kind of a timely movie given everything going on and kind of where our culture is. And I can see why I think a lot of critics maybe had an issue with this movie. This is very, the heroes in this are the conspiracy theorists, and they're the crazy ones, and you know, the media is the one that's covering things up, and the government is trying to cover up the truth from the American people, and it's these kind of crazy, bizarre, and really funny, but just sort of quirky conspiracy people that kind of, you know, they don't have everything right. Some of their theories are crazy, but they kind of figured out a lot of the stuff even before NASA and some of that. So I can see, I think some people are biased because of that, and they're kind of maybe giving this movie a harder time just because it's, you know, it's promoting conspiracy theories, and they're making conspiracy, you know, they're the heroes. And I don't think the movie's doing that. I think if this movie had come out maybe 10 years ago or even 5 years ago without all the cultural kind of context, no one would have any problem with it. It just sort of happens to be this kind of crazy conspiracy guy is the one that is kind of figuring stuff out. And I kind of take it more, this one's not preaching really anything. That doesn't really have any kind of message, I guess, or agenda, but it's just sort of affirming this sort of search for truth. Who do you believe? Do you still kind of push for truth and kind of stand with what you believe and dig deeper, even when kind of the world's telling you you're crazy and pushing against you? So from that side of it, if you don't take it kind of through the lens of, like, you know, 2022 political context, I think there is some stuff to kind of grasp onto that and kind of cheer and affirm that, you know, even kind of given everything that's going on, like, you need to kind of find the truth for yourself and dig deep and kind of hold on to what you believe. Maybe the other one is kind of consistent with maybe most disaster movies, is maybe kind of like the fragile nature of, like, human existence, which maybe sounds kind of more heady and deeper than it really is, but just the fact that, you know, like, just sort of a simple thing as far as kind of moving the orbit of the moon, and, you know, how our whole, like, civilization kind of comes unglued, and the planet kind of starts to destroy us, and people turn against each other. And I don't know, as a Christian, I think it's sort of one of those, I think a lot of disaster movies are just sort of like a reminder of, hey, we might think we're the big thing in this universe and that we, our society, and we're so advanced, but all it takes is this sort of, pushing one moon, this a little bit out of its orbit, and all of a sudden everything kind of comes destroyed, and none of our technologies or intelligence can protect us from that. And the film doesn't really, it's not hammering that home and preaching that or making some kind of agenda out of it. But I think as a Christian viewer, at least, and really just as a human, it's a good reminder. I think that's sort of what part of the appeal for these movies is just to kind of remind us what is our place in our universe. Maybe we're not as big of a deal. We're not just as in charge as maybe we tend to think, even if the movie itself is obviously in a fictionalized sense. So like I said, this movie, I didn't hate it as much as I thought maybe I would, as much as maybe it seems a lot of other people and critics or Rotten Tomatoes hate this movie. I thought it was fine. This is, I think if you were expecting anything more than what this movie is, then the problem's probably just that you had way too high expectations for a movie about the moon crashing into Earth. This is just sort of a dumb, fun, maybe a little bit too long, but just sort of an adventure thriller movie with some decently charming enough characters and an interesting enough story. That definitely makes checking out. I don't know if it's necessarily a movie that everyone needs to see it and rush out to theaters, but I think if you are going to see it, it's definitely worth seeing in the theater, and it's going to get in the full spectacle of this. But overall, I thought, hey, this movie was fine for what it was, and for me, at least, that's all that I needed it to be. But let me know if you guys see this movie, if you're a fan like I am of these disaster movies. Let me know what you thought of it. I'm curious to see if you got some enjoyment out of it like I did, or if you just thought this movie was just a little bit too dumb, especially that third act, that you just couldn't quite go along with everything it was doing. Love to have a conversation with you guys in the comment section about it. Encourage you guys, if you guys are new to The Collision or you've been watching, make sure you hit the subscribe button, like the video, kind of join with what we're doing here at The Collision. I got a lot of stuff, a lot of movie reviews and other live streams and stuff coming up for this year, and we'd love to have you just be a part of that. But most of all, guys, stay safe and continue to collide with your world for Christ.